definite, denigration to the idea that it doesn't exist. It's all in your mind. It's a hoax. It's fake. It's
exactly
not real. No, torsion field physics is not pseudoscience. It's real science. There are thousands, tens of thousands of peer-reviewed papers on torsion field physics in the physics journal all over the world.
Is it basically just an energy field that is other dimensional, but it, as you just said a minute ago, it manifests itself in our 3D reality here?
All right, let's start at the basics. Let's begin with the credibility thing. Torsion field physics is mainstream physics that most of the mainstream doesn't know about, because there was a definite campaign by the security services, the CIA and the KGB in the U.S. and the Soviet Union, up until the wall came down in Berlin and the Soviet Union collapsed in the early 90s, to keep the research in these fields totally top secret. Because this is a physics that is the bottom foundation of reality. It is what all the other science studies in physics prescind from. And the proof of this is that up until the mid-'90s, for which we have statistics, something like 10 to 20,000 papers had been published, as I just said, in the peer-reviewed literature all over the world. Over half of those papers have Russian authors, and they were sealed behind the Iron Curtain by Stalin and his descendants, because this is the stuff whereby extraordinary weapons can be made. What do we always classify, John? The stuff you can turn into things to kill people.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? Everything.
Yeah. Torsion physics in the wrong hands kills people and can kill a lot of people. Talk about weapons of mass destruction. It is the ultimate weapon of mass destruction. And at the risk of starting a bonfire that will not go out for the rest of the evening, I will just tell you that what brought down the World Trade Towers in New York on 9/11 was a torsion field weapon.
Now, does this go back to Tesla? Is this what he was working with?
This was a variant of what he was working on. The other problem, John, is because it hasn't been mainstreamed, because of political reasons for keeping it in the closet, keeping it out of the sight of most people, everybody, every physicist, every scientist, every institution, every government agency that trips over this and starts to do experiments and starts building equipment to make it work for them, they give it a totally different name. So you've got the same physics under 1,000 different, nom de plumes. It's been called ether physics. It's been called scalar physics. It's been called torsion physics. It's been called all kinds of things. It's all the same stuff. It's manipulating the ether, which is the foundation of atoms and molecules and electromagnetic fields. The ether is the foundation of reality. I have a friend, Paul Violet, who's a genius physicist, lives back in New York. He's written umpteen books on this, and he calls it quantum kinetics. It's every guy who figures this out comes up with a new name. And the only way you standardize names, going back through the historical record, is when everybody kind of agrees on the same thing is called the same thing. But
Sure.
If you have a politically fragmented situation where by design everybody is kept apart, no one can come together. You can't have conferences in the mainstream in the light of day on torsion field physics, because in the Soviet Union, the KGB would attack all the scientists who felt this was real and did experiments like Kozyrev, and in the West, the CIA takes out after you. Or in the more recent instance, there seem to be parts of the Mexican government that don't want this kind of out in the light of day and in the mainstream and openly discussed. So we are dealing with a suppressed science. If you want a tutorial in this, I would advise you to either get a guy named Joseph Farrell on your show as a guest, Dr. Farrell, or start reading his voluminous books. I mean, Joseph can write like a book a month, and it's got depth and it's got references and it's real science. He's an Oxford PhD. He can run rings around most of the rest of us who take years to write one book. He can write an incredible book in a month and does excellent homework. And so if you want a real tutorial in the history of torsion field physics and how the Nazis were involved and the Soviets were involved and the U.S. government was involved and the so-called Philadelphia experiment seems to be part of the secret field. All of this stuff aggregates down to the same stuff, which is it's suppressed science, it's the way the universe really works, it's what Einstein was looking for through his entire career, the so-called unified field theory. Torsion physics is the unified field, and those buildings came down in New York because somebody, and I can't tell you tonight who, but somebody used it to destroy two 1,500-foot skyscrapers in seconds.
You believe this. You realize that. I know you realize the gravity of what you are saying.
Yeah, and I gave a whole presentation in Amsterdam a couple, 3 years ago laying out the point-by-point case, building on the work of a brilliant genius named Dr. Judy Woods, who George got on and actually interviewed. And then I was able to get a copy of Dr. Woods' book, which is sitting here on my desk, called Where Did the Towers Go? I was able to get a copy of that book, which is a meticulous second-by-second recounting of all the evidence around 9/11 and the fact that those buildings didn't collapse. They were dematerialized. They were dustified, to use her term.
That's pretty strong stuff, Richard.
It's in the data. I was able to get a copy of Wood's book into the hands of Jesse Ventura. Jesse Ventura went on national radio shows and started talking about Dr. Judy Wood, and then suddenly weird things started happening in Jesse's life, and he shut up. Because it's the touchstone to what really happened on 9/11. Now, you got to open your mind really big and say, if somebody in our reality has that kind of physics and technology and exercise that as a demonstration on 9/11 to the power structure, who did it, why did they do it, and where are they now? And has the entire Al-Qaeda